All right, welcome everyone. This webinar is Research Journeys, Insights from STEM Librarians at Every Stage, and it's sponsored by the NCLA STEM-LINC section. We have four presenters: Candace Jacobs from UNCG Greensboro, Angela Whitehurst from ECU, Colleen Foy from Wake Forest, as well as myself from Wake Forest. So the reason why this particular webinar was organized the way it is that we know as librarians that there are some of us who actually do research. So the webinar is intended to give STEM-LINC members the opportunity to present out on their research and at whatever stage it's at. So we have Candace, who's just started her research, who will introduce herself as well as her particular research project. Angela, who's further along in her research project, and Colleen, who's completed and published her research project, as well as myself as a cautionary tale in terms of how do you deal with those hiccups when you're conducting your own research. So I'd like to turn it over to Candace. Take it away, Candace.
Hello, everyone. As Denise said, my name is Candace Jacobs. So I'm going to talk about just what it's like to get started in the research project process as a novice research librarian. So the name of my project is actually Impact and Connection, which is why it says that there. There we go. Okay, so about my background. So again, my name is Candace Jacobs. I'm an assistant professor and STEM liaison librarian at University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and I started there in 2022. And I'm currently an Institute for Research Design and Librarianship, or IRDL scholar. So my background is in sociology with a minor in Spanish, and then also a Master of Library Science with an academic librarianship concentration. And these are my liaison areas. Okay. So what is my research project? So again, the title is Impact and Connection. So the effects of mentorship on Black librarians. It's a working title, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm performing research as an IRDL scholar. So my research project, again, is called Impact and Connection, the effects of mentorship on Black librarians. And so with this project, I seek to discover the effect of mentorship as received in a structured scholarship slash mentorship program and its effects on job preparedness, career success, and wellness of BIPOC librarians. So I'm proposing to start off with Black librarians due to time parameters of my research program, which ends officially at like the end of June 2025. But depending on my screening survey results, I may start with analyzing the data of a different group of BIPOC librarians. I just want to make sure that my participant size is representative for each population. So at the conclusion of my research, I'll analyze data collected from all BIPOC librarians, and I should be able to open up my analysis in the fall of 2025, which will be here before you know it. Okay, so why my research matters. So in interviews of BIPOC academic librarians, a lack of mentoring has been reported as like a hurdle for career trajectory, as well as like any kind of mentorship is actually preferred over no mentorship at all. So interview participants have reported needing to solicit mentorship outside of institutions due to inadequate offerings where they work. So it's just been really difficult to even have great mentorship at their current libraries. So librarians have also reported needing and lacking emotional support, career planning, and advice from more seasoned librarians, as well as personal support. So being able to like socialize and network in the profession and to decipher library culture and politics has also been reported as a disadvantage for BIPOC librarians. So in summary, like a mix of practical advice and psychosocial support from mentors is needed for BIPOC mentees. So my goals are to study how mentorship is conducted with BIPOC librarians in structured scholarship slash mentorship programs. And I'd like to know how receiving mentoring affects their job preparedness, career success, and wellness. And in this, I want to know how mentorship also affects their career trajectory ideas and how emotional support is provided. I've just noticed the emotional labor that BIPOC librarians have to take on, either by choice or by obligation. And so I'm just wondering if both female and male librarians are tasked with taking on the same labor. Or I'm wondering if this could be a case of intersectionality of being both male and BIPOC versus being both female and BIPOC. And with that said, intersectionality, are there perceived wants, needs, and values for female and male mentees in a mentoring experience? So based on research, there's not been a lot of data concerning how the presence of mentorship, specifically for individual groups in the BIPOC librarian community, helps to improve their career and wellness. And because there are unique cultural barriers and burdens that require guidance and support tailored to both BIPOC women's and men's specific needs and experiences. And this includes like empathizing with and validating their experiences and identity. However, just more broadly, research across many fields has shown that having a mentor can be crucial for people of color in general. So my study could help to alleviate the dearth of literature on the effects of mentorship, specifically for individual BIPOC librarian groups in structured programs. So how I plan to complete my study. Can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so I created a screening survey and in-depth interview questions, as well as a recruitment flyer and recruitment email to send out to potential participants. So I completed my application for IRB to receive approval for my study and associated materials. So once that's been approved, I'll send out my screening survey to my potential study participants. And I'll also continue to contact scholarship/mentorship programs that work with BIPOC librarians to increase diversity and inclusion in the library. And I'll need to reach out to them because I do need to gain permission to access their alumni and to contact them. And the reason why I actually chose structure programs is because there are criteria for the mentors in those programs so that I'll know, so that it'll help to eliminate some of the independent variables that come along with mentoring and the mentoring experience. I mean, it's not going to eliminate all of them, but it'll eliminate a great number of them. So it actually, I feel like it would make my study findings more valid. So to gather data, I'll be conducting a mixed method study where I plan to start with a screening survey to determine participant study eligibility, so quantitative data, followed by in-depth interviews, so qualitative data. And to request study participants, I'm going to send out an email to various listservs of structured scholarship/mentorship programs that are part of library organizations, such as ALA, ACRL, BCALA, JCLC, and ACERL, which is the Association of Southeastern Research Libraries, as well as NCLA, which is the North Carolina Library Association, and others I'll identify as well, to reach my desired study population. So the survey will be created to assess what mentoring the individuals have received and what impact having a mentor or not having a mentor has had on their job preparedness, retention, wellness, and perceived career success. So in addition, I'll request the survey participants on social media to help expand my coverage. So the data will be analyzed using convenient sampling. So once I've completed 12 in-depth interviews, I will begin to create codes and things for my data. And I feel I can gather enough data to begin my qualitative data analysis by next June. Okay, so who will be included in my study? I'm going to include BIPOC librarians from all types of libraries. It's not just academic. And in terms of what stage I'm in during my research project right now, like I said, I have completed my IRB application. We had to do research proposals for IRDL, which has been incredibly helpful because it actually helped me to form to begin my literature review. So I did that proposal rewrite and also began the process of identifying scholarships/mentorship programs that I'd like to work with. And I've also begun contacting those programs. So my key findings thus far. Okay, so just as a note, I'm actually really, really glad that IRDL had we scholars to work on an elevator speech to be able to accurately express our research in various settings. So it's just really, really important to know your research endeavors, even if you don't have all of the details yet worked out. So my key findings are that my initial timeline is unrealistic. When I first started the program, I was like, oh yeah, every month I'm going to have a different thing completed. And that's just not how it works. Because so much of the timing is not up to us when we're working with other people to or programs to gather data. We have to work around different timelines. And if anybody has gone through the IRB process, you know that it takes a while and things are going to send back to you. You're going to have to do edits and the process can take a few months. And just making sure that I'm giving myself grace, yet being disciplined with my timelines. And there's just not enough time to have a study as expansive as the one I'd like at this time, which includes all BIPOC librarians. And that's actually why I'm just focusing on one group at a time. Um, and so I will be able to expand my study after my initial study is complete. So compiling, analyzing, and coding data will take longer than anticipated. Yes. So again, I'm a novice librarian researcher, so all these things I'm, kind of working out. I got really wonderful, extensive training in IRDL, but putting it into practice once I've actually gathered my data, that's going to take some time. Also, working full time in a tenure track position, it's very hectic, and I'm currently going through reappointment, and so it takes time to complete that packet and gather the materials. I also have to teach. I have my liaison duties. I'm applying to present at conferences, serving on library organization committees, as well as serving on committees at my university. So all of that in addition to trying to complete my research. Okay, so how I plan to finish my research. So the first thing is setting aside time every week to work on my research and writing. And actually, as part of the IODL process, administration had to agree for me to have 1 day a week set aside strictly just for IRDL research purposes. So that has been amazing. But I do find myself working outside of just that 1 day because it is a lot to do. And I just want to make sure that I'm able to do it in a timely manner. So complete my literature review, develop a research design, which I've done, but of course, changes may need to be made based on the data collection process. So select my sample. So I've identified the population that I want to study, but then I need to determine how I'm going to select those participants. And I'm going to use my screening survey results to identify participants in which to schedule in-depth interviews. So collecting data. So of course, gathering information using surveys and in-depth interviews, and ensuring ethical data collection practices and not IRDO, but IRB. Those acronyms are so close together. I mix them up. But yeah, IRB is going to help with that because they're going to tell me based on what I submitted, what's ethical and what's not. Analyzing data. So just organizing and interpreting my collected data using relevant statistical techniques as well as qualitative analysis methods. So like I need to create a code book. And also when I'm asking my in-depth interview questions, I actually have a definitions page. So they'll understand, like my participants will understand what I mean when I ask about certain things, like what's job preparedness or, career success and what's considered wellness, like the definition. So that way they'll know exactly what I mean when I'm asking those questions. So interpret my findings. So just explaining the meaning of my results and drawing conclusions based on my analysis and also considering my limitations of my study, and presenting my results. So communicating my research findings clearly and concisely through written reports, presentations, and publications, and also including proper citations. So some important considerations, ethical considerations. So just making sure that I adhere to ethical guidelines when conducting my research, including informed consent. So I'll be sending out those informed consent forms for people to sign, so I'll know that they're okay with participating in my study and all the risks that come with it. Privacy protection, making sure that I'm the only person who has access to the identifiable information of each of my participants, and also responsible data management. So making sure that I'm the only person who has access to the data. Time management. So I actually created a detailed project timeline to ensure efficient progress and meeting my deadlines. And I've learned that this does need to be firm yet flexible. As things unfold. Like I said before, you're working with other people or programs, you're going to need to be a little flexible. And also seeking feedback. So consulting with advisors and peers through my research process to gain valuable insights and feedback. Okay, so potential research barriers. Participation. So I need participants to conduct my interviews. And I also need permission from the scholarship/mentorship programs to contact their alumni. Representation. So I want to have as many BIPOC librarian groups represented in my study as possible. So, and there's more women than men in librarianship, especially for BIPOC librarians. But I would like both of them to be accurately represented in my study as much as possible. And time. So I need to make sure that I'm not overly ambitious with my endeavors with the time that I have to complete my initial study. Okay, so where am I looking to present my research? Okay, so once my study is complete, I'm actually looking at conferences. I haven't identified them yet, but national and international conferences as well that are both library and non-library conferences, because there are some associated organizations that would also be interested in my research. Journals, so both library and related disciplines for that as well. I would definitely like to write a book discussing the various aspects of mentorship that I'll discuss in my research and its effect on BIPOC librarians. Okay, so now I'm going to pass the ball to Angela, who will discuss her in-process research.
Hi, everybody. As mentioned earlier, my name is Angela Whitehurst, and I am the Engineering and Technology Librarian at East Carolina University. And my research that's in progress, and I'm coming close to finishing my article, is about the faculty's perceptions of student AI literacy skills. And those are the students that are within ECU's College of Engineering and Technology. Next slide, please. So a little bit about my background. I became the Engineering and Technology Librarian. I'm also a Library Associate Professor last fall. So I've only been in this role for about a year. And as many people in this field, I don't actually have a background in science or engineering. So I'm still learning a lot along the way. But I do have a BS and an MA in history and also an MLS from North Carolina Central University. I do have about 20 years of library experience where I started as a staff member and have worked my way up and have held faculty status for a long time. So my liaison areas, I do have 5 departments. 4 of them are within the College of Engineering and Technology, and 1 is a different program. So the 4 that are in engineering and technology are computer science, construction management, engineering, and technology systems. I'm also the liaison for the Coastal Sciences PhD program. And for this particular study, I decided to leave this program out of my study, one, because it's very different from the degree programs in the College of Engineering and Technology, but also they are involved in another AI-related research study going on here on campus, and I just didn't want to cause any confusion either. And I'll briefly mention that that other study a little bit later on because it is sort of pertinent to opportunities down the road. Next slide, please. So for my research questions, over the last year, I've wanted to learn about the types of AI literacy skills that the students are starting to exhibit and determine if there's any ways that the library can assist with teaching those skills or enhancing those skills. So as I started doing research in this area and really thinking about a research project and how best to answer these questions, I decided actually to focus on faculty members first because I felt like they were the ones probably seeing if and how students were using AI tools, and I focus mainly on generative AI tools in their particular programs and in their particular classes. So I decided to survey, excuse me, the faculty members first. So I was looking at things like the level of AI literacy skills that the students are exhibiting, if and how faculty members are integrating those AI tools into their classes, and if there's any interest by the faculty members in collaborating with librarians to teach AI literacy skills. So these ideas sort of inform my research questions. So as you can see, my overarching research question is what are faculty members' perceptions of the current level of AI literacy skills held by students in the majors in the College of Engineering and Technology at ECU? And then the other questions I wanted to answer as well about are faculty members addressing the strengths and weaknesses of the AI tools with their students in their classes, or are they attempting to try to integrate AI tools into their teaching or into their coursework? And are they willing to work with faculty members to help educate students about AI literacy? And if so, how would that be or what methods could we use? Next slide, please. So as I was doing some initial research, of course, since this is a very evolving topic, I was finding lots of different pieces about what the characteristic of being an AI literate individual looked like. But I did find one particular article, which you can see the citation down there in my footnote, that sort of brought all these pieces together that I was seeing, and so it was a really cohesive, evolving definition of what an AI literate person looks like. So to be AI literate, according to this article, you need to be familiar with how generative AI creates new information, and that's just a basic understanding of how it creates new information, not necessarily really anything in depth. To understand the strengths and weaknesses of generative AI tools, and to be able to demonstrate the ability to evaluate AI generated content, and to understand some of the ethical issues related to generative AI, mainly looking at bias, equity, and privacy. And so in my survey, when I created it, and I created a question specifically about the ethical issues, I did put in the question of bias, equity, and privacy because I wanted the faculty members to think beyond plagiarism and academic integrity issues, because I know that's something that's forefront in their mind right now. Next slide, please. All right, so when I started to put together my methodology and come up with my instruments, I did decide to use a mixed methods approach, similar to what Candace is using. And so I created an email survey through Qualtrics, and also decided to do semi-structured interviews, follow-up interviews using Microsoft Teams to be able to use the transcription tools within Microsoft Teams when I did those virtual interviews. So my population there's 102 faculty members within the College of Engineering and Technology here at ECU. And that's sort of all levels of faculty members, anywhere from part-time adjuncts to people who are teaching instructors and they just focus on teaching, to tenure track faculty and tenured faculty members as well. So out of the 102 faculty members, 21 did complete my survey with a 20.5% response rate. And considering response rates can be rather low these days, I thought this was actually pretty good overall. Unfortunately, I only had 2 people volunteer for the follow-up in interview. Luckily, they were in 2 different departments, so it didn't give it the information I got from them was a little bit different as far as their perspectives are concerned. So in my assessment inquiries, both in the survey and my semi-structured interview questions, I did ask the things about the level of AI literacy skills, using those 4 characteristics that I had found a definition of, whether the faculty were integrating it into their coursework, if they're interested in collaborating with the library. Several faculty demographic questions, which if I went back and did this again, I would not ask as many of the demographic questions because it turned out it really didn't have as much of an impact as I thought it would. And if I had just asked what department they were in, that would be enough to see a couple of differences. And I was a little bit concerned. My survey was 15 questions long. I was a little bit concerned about the length at that point. And so if I did this again, I wouldn't have but maybe 1 or 2 demographic questions and maybe make it 10 to 12 questions long. And then in the detailed information in the interviews, I got stuff like asking them if they had used it in their classes, like what exact tools their students were using, or what tools had they tried in their classrooms, or what types of assignments they had tried using AI tools with. So it just gave me a little bit more in-depth details with the 2 interviews that I completed. So as far as the stages of my project, I sort of started coming up with the idea around fall break last year and starting to flesh it out and doing a little bit of reading and research in late fall. I did have to go through our RB submission as well. So I completed that in December and January. My survey ran for about 6 weeks last spring, from mid-February to the end of March, for the faculty members to complete it. Very shortly after that, before people were getting away from the summer, I went ahead and did the interviews and did data analysis and some writing over the summer. And hopefully this will be submitted to a journal this fall. And one interesting thing that came out of this in a completely unexpected collaboration is about the time that I was starting my data analysis at the end of last spring, I had several of the construction management faculty who are part of my liaison areas approach me about working with them on an article and bringing some of my data in with their article, because were doing a survey about student perceptions of it. And then also they had done some active learning exercises in their classes using AI tools. So I'm actually dividing my data, and the perception piece from the faculty is going to go in the article and it's actually going to be a construction management journal. And then I did have 2 or 3 questions left over that were more library related that I'm not going to enter into that particular article. I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do with that data other than inform the things we're doing here in the library and learning objects and so forth. So that's another piece I have to figure out, but that was just something that was very unexpected that came up during this process. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of the key findings that I learned from the survey and from my interviews, the biggest thing was that from the faculty perspective, most students lack AI literacy skills. And that was something that I was kind of expecting that. I didn't think there was going to be anything earth-shattering that came out of that. And a lot of students tend to take AI output at face value. I did have one of the professors I interviewed. She said that she did notice that some of her really most excellent students would spend more time evaluating the output, but for the most part, most of her students just used it and turned in what they used and moved on about their day. So they just took it as face value. And then another thing that I learned as well was the faculty really feel they need more training and support to deal with these new AI tools. According to my survey, only about half of the faculty had even mentioned it in their classes and what some of the strengths and weaknesses were. And only about 25% had actually tried to integrate AI tools into their coursework, and most of them kind of had mixed results. I did have an open-ended question in the survey that asked them about any comments they had, and I got a lot of answers about the faculty members themselves didn't know much about AI tools. They felt like they needed training in it, and that also they really need guidance from the university about how to use it and how not to use it, and what would be acceptable and what would be a violation of academic integrity policies. And that's changing a little bit now, but there's still a lot of angst and uncertainty among the faculty, because here at ECU, it's pretty much been left up to the faculty and the departments to determine how they want to deal with AI, at least at this particular time. And one other thing I thought was interesting, when I asked the question about the ethical issues related to AI, I didn't get as many faculty members being as concerned about the ethical issues, the bias and privacy and equity issues. And I have an assumption that is right now, what's in front of them right now is they're more concerned with academic integrity problems than they are with the other issues, but down the road that might change. As far as interest in collaborating with the library, I asked 3 questions related to that. One is whether they had collaborated with librarians in the past, how they did, what method, and then would they be interested in the future and how so. So they were interested in collaborating. Online tutorial was the thing that they really wanted the most, and I have a feeling that's because of just lack of time on their part. That's something they can give the students to look at, outside of class. Some of them said they would like instruction sessions related to AI, and then also research consultations was the next most popular way to collaborate with the library. Next slide, please. Okay, so barriers and opportunities. I'm going to kind of break this down into 2 different sections, one related to the article itself and the other about implementing ideas, not only here in the library, but also across campus as well. So with the article itself, the main barrier that I had, I did mention the survey that I wouldn't ask as many demographic questions as I did previously. That was the only thing that I really was disappointed with, other than the lack of response for the interviews. I just didn't get a lot out of those questions, so I would leave those out next time. But since I am working with teaching faculty, of course, many of them didn't work over the summer, and so I've been finished with my written portion for quite a while. I'm still waiting on them to finish their piece. So our timelines are different. And that's why I said, hopefully we'll get this submitted this fall. Our writing styles, the perfect person who's writing most of their information in the article writes very differently than I do. And so I had a piece of her work, part of the draft, that I was trying to go ahead and write mine in a similar style to smooth it out and just make it flow well. But again, it was such a different style than the way I write. It was a little difficult. And then again, how to use that library data that I'm not using as far with the construction management article. And I haven't figured that out yet. As far as implementing the ideas that came out of the survey, some of the barriers are, again, a lack of what I call the campus vision. We're not all moving in the same direction at this point. Things are happening in very small pockets on campus. And as I mentioned before, the university administration is sort of leaving this up to the faculty. So there's not one vision yet as far as AI is concerned and how we are going to deal with it. Same thing with experimentation in the library. Some of us have jumped on AI pretty quickly, others have not. And one thing that came out of one of the interviews I did that I thought, well, there might be some overlap between departments and you have to figure out who is responsible for what, because one of the people I interviewed said that they would like a somewhere to go if they had a project and there was an AI tool that could possibly help them, and have somebody consult with them about what that tool might be and how to use it. And so my thought, well, that's not really the library, that would be the Office of Faculty Excellence. So who's responsible for what on campus, whether it's the library, it's campus IT, it's the Office of Faculty Excellence, or somebody else. So that'll have to be worked out too. And of course, faculty attitudes and time constraints, a lot of them are still very wary of AI tools and don't want to deal with it yet and just don't have a lot of time to learn about it. As far as the opportunities are concerned, I have completed an online tutorial that I have pushed out to my faculty. Once I get any bugs worked out, we're going to push it out to the entire university related to generative AI and research. Several of my colleagues have created research guides, both for students and for faculty members as well. Some of us are starting to integrate AI concepts into instruction. And I do think this will be a good topic for faculty outreach. It may be a way to pull faculty into using the library services, even if they hadn't in the past, or maybe they did before the pandemic and then they haven't come back since the pandemic. Maybe this isn't going to be another way to pull them back in. And I'm hoping an opportunity will be, at least for the whole campus, the results of what's called the MAGI project. ECU is one of 19 universities in the country participating in this 2-year research study sponsored by Ithaca SR. And we're measuring the impact of AI applications on university campuses and the long-term needs of universities and their personnel. And our library director is actually the principal investigator on this particular project. But the 2-year study will not be up until next summer. So it will be another year before we really have results from that. So I'm hoping that this eventually clarifies the vision and direction, not only for the library, but maybe for the whole campus as well. Next slide, please. So as far as my presentations and publications are concerned, like I said, we're getting close to submitting our journal article. So I did provide a poster session about my data analysis this summer at the Metrolina Library Association conference that was held in Charlotte. Of course, today's webinar is part of this. I had also put in a proposal to give a presentation in November at the STEM Librarians Collaborative Conference in November, which is a national virtual conference. They notified me last week that I was accepted, but they also wanted me to be a keynote presenter instead of just a regular presenter as well. So I will be one of the keynotes on the last day of that particular conference. And then the first article will be submitted into the International Journal of Construction Education, which is going to be the faculty perspective piece of it. And then once I decide what to do with the library data, that may show up in another publication at a future point in time. So that's where I am in progress. So I'm pretty far along in my presentation and publication. I'm pretty much finished with the data analysis as well. So I'm going to turn it on over to Colleen now, who has completed her research project.
All right. Well, good afternoon, all. I'm Colleen Foy research and instruction librarian for biology, chemistry, and health and exercise science with the Z. Smith Reynolds Library at Wake Forest University. I'll be sharing research outcomes associated with my project incorporating health literacy workshops in workplace wellness programs. So on my next slide, I want to share some background for the project itself. It all started for me as a Medical Library Association's Research Training Institute Fellow in 2022. The RTI is a year-long training program that leads and supports health science and medical librarians through a research project of their choosing. With the background in exercise science and experience in corporate wellness, community health, and weight management education, I have an interest in health literacy research. And now as a librarian, I really see the potential in investigating health literacy skill development through education and instruction, being that the complex skill piece of health literacy is what can evidently impact health outcomes. Although they are very setting and situation based, health literacy assessments are well documented in the literature, but there aren't a lot of librarians publishing about instances of successful approaches to supporting that skill development. I'm not suggesting that librarians aren't doing this work, but the publication piece is missing. So I'm going to dive right into what my research questions are on the next slide. Before sharing some details about the protocol and design, my research questions, my primary research question is here on the left. What is the impact of theory-informed instruction on behaviors and attitudes towards health information in an employee wellness program through instruction and assessment? And then tangentially, I wanted to survey the impact of experiential learning approaches on information evaluation and the exposure to valid sources on engagement and really future use. So next slide. Here are a few notes about the research design and elements of the protocol. I took a quantitative approach and used a quasi-experimental methodology, primarily due to my sample. The Wake Forest University wellness program I partnered with was well established. My recruitment methods were quite easily executed because these participants were already a part of this program and my workshops were embedded into the existing curriculum. The workshops themselves were about an hour and included instruction and some form of engaging activity. Over 4 workshops, 65 participants attended and completed pre and post surveys on health literacy indicators. I developed the survey instrument myself. I did mention earlier that there are health literacy assessment tools out there, but they're all based on aptitude assessment rather than on attitudes and behaviors towards health information. So it was necessary, based on my research question, for me to create a tool that would help me answer that. And because I was asking for survey participation, I needed IRB support and approval. For data analyses, I use Qualtrics and Excel tools, as well as Stratology for statistical analysis. So speaking of data, here are my findings. Comparing pre and post survey responses, social media use for HW or health and wellness information decreased 36%, which is definitely a good direction due to that space being virtually unregulated. Social media use for medical or med information showed a 13% decrease. For database use, and this is databases would be the ones that I shared anyway were Medline Plus, PubMed, and even YouTube, which is, the largest database we have freely accessible to us. For medical information there was an increase of 31%, and for health and wellness information, there was an increase of 18%. And lastly, a notable finding was relative to behaviors around referrals for health information from friends, family, and colleagues. This was virtually unchanged and came in at a relatively high significance or low p-value. It's interesting to me because this just proves that we're going to continue to rely on word of mouth referrals for this type of information, regardless of exposure to valid information sources. So it just further supports this need for the proliferation of guidance on how to manage and process this vast amount of information that finds us these days on our devices to support a more preferential ecosystem of information sharing. So on the next slide, for my takeaways, I was going to title this slide "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly," but I don't have any uglies or kind of bad memories from this project. There were hiccups, of course, but those are normal, and they didn't really add up to stressful collateral for me. So I decided to title this subsection "Affirmations and Opportunities." And it's not an error that the list is the same for both. All of these items are really lending the ideas of affirmation and opportunity to each other. So firstly, I really had a great opportunity as the new Health and Exercise Science Department Liaison at Wake in 2022 to work with them and get to know this employee wellness program they've been managing for years. I really had to hit the ground running from an outreach perspective. And I will say that 2 years later, I'm still facilitating those workshops, even though I'm not collecting data anymore. For IRB involvement, that informed my future IRB. I've had one other since then, and it has also sparked my interest in serving on a review board somewhere. A librarian is a great contribution to an IRB. Of course, my research acumen has had a huge curve over the last couple of years, and that has only bolstered the number of faculty invitations for me to support their research. It's given me a bit of street cred to prove my research output as well. Also, going through the peer review process has only made me a better peer reviewer myself. I don't need to tell this group that librarians need to be peer reviewers as often as possible, again, to cultivate the information landscape. I will say it has urged me to always remember to be kind when providing feedback to researchers during a peer review. I had both kind and not so kind reviewers with this project and others. So that experience just reinforced the need for kindness and that process, and that you can be honest and kind at the same time. And then overall, this process and the achievement of publications is only further supporting libraries and the work of librarians and adding value to both. And so finally, my next steps include, on the next slide, a lot has actually stemmed from this project already. I've done posters and lightning talks and a few full sessions at various conferences along the way, but more specifically and on a grander level, while doing health literacy framework research, it became clear to me that the students at my institution could benefit from a course grounded in health literacy theory and concepts. And I'm lucky to be in an institution that offers library credit-bearing courses, and I can practice that development as an instructor. So I created a course called Topics in Health Science Information. We cover the history of medicine and training requirements, myths, dis, and malinformation in health sciences, as well as the historical and systemic impacts on health outcomes. The final project requires students to create a health literacy concept map. I have survey data from those 40 or so students who've participated already, confirming the absence of awareness of those concepts before taking the course. And I've also since embarked on another research journey by creating health literacy workshop adaptations for public high schools, specifically for students in what is called the Career Technical Education Program. In partnership with another fellowship here at Wake Forest, I actually have my first session in just a few weeks at a local high school. High schools are uncharted territory for me, but the nursing teacher I'm working with at the moment is super supportive and excited to have me come to her classes, and therefore I'm excited about that too. So that's it. Thanks for your attention, and I will hand it over to Denise.
All right, thank you so much, Colleen. So my section of the talk is hiccups, planning for the unexpected. My name is Denise Lewis, and I'm the research and instruction librarian here at Wake Forest University. My research topic is bridging the information literacy divide, serving incoming freshmen digital information literacy and self-efficacy. And it says an academic librarian's presumptions, and you see that's crossed out. So the image is one that I generated using DALL-E, showing a librarian juggling a variety of different things, and that goes into the hiccups. And I'll talk about those as I go along. So I've been here at Wake Forest since March of 2019. In terms of my background, I have a BS and an MS in electrical engineering. There is an associate's in culinary arts in the middle, as well as my MLIS. And the way that this project started is that I had a project when I was getting my MLIS at IUPUI. And one of the things that came out in some of my research is that there's been a significant decline in the number of school media specialists, librarians that are in the elementary schools, high schools, as well as middle schools. And even when I lived in Tampa, when I was wrapping up my MLIS, there was a county in Tampa that had eliminated all of their school media specialists. I started this research when I was selected for the Institute for Research, Design and Librarianship, IDL, in 2022. But there was another article that informed my research by Islam and Morno, From Perceptions to Connections, Informing Information Literacy Program Planning in Academic Libraries. Because one of the things that they found was that even in high schools where they actually had databases, that it was very rare for a school media specialist to actually teach students how to use it. So my main research questions are, what are the digital information literacy skills of incoming freshmen at Wake Forest? And some of the sub-questions that I really wanted to get to was, what percentage of students were exposed to school media specialists or a librarian during their high school experience? Are there any differences between students depending on the type of school that they went to, whether it's like a public, charter, private, if they were homeschooled? What's the self-efficacy of students with regards to their research skills? Because working with even undergraduate as well as graduate students here at Wake, there have been times where I've had students be very hesitant about learning a variety of different databases. Like, I'll never forget, there was a talk that I did for physics. Well, one of the graduate students was like, I really start getting nervous when I need to use, multiple databases. And I'm thinking to myself, there isn't a singular database that has every article, book, patent, standard, etc. So you have to look at, basically utilize multiple databases for breadth and depth. But that's a whole nother topic. And I also want to know, what percentage of the students utilize the database to conduct their research in high school, and which databases or tools that they use. So when I started my research in 2022, it was like that whole ramp of here. Because my main background, I've worked in corporate America as well as in academia before, but a lot of my experience until I became a librarian was in corporate America. So in corporate America, I'm used to having a project and managing that project, even managing multiple projects. But the thing that I recognize in moving into academia is that it's not about projects anymore. It's about that academic year. So when you're managing a project, when you're doing your own research, you really have to have that long-term viewpoint to really see how do you plan and schedule that time. So when I started IRDL, and the way that IRDL works is you apply in December, you're notified of your selection in the spring, and then there's like a 10-day workshop over the summer. So I did that workshop over the summer, but I was also going up for promotion in the fall. And if you've gone up for promotion, you know that you have to present or develop a dossier. And that's not a 1 hour, 10 hour, even a 20-hour process. It's more like, well, it felt like 80 to 100 hours, but that's fine. But at any rate, so that took a lot of time and delayed. So I actually didn't do my survey until I joined into the engineering department's IRB. And I did the survey this past spring, 2024. Yes, a year and a half later. So I did the survey in the engineering 111 and 111 classes that had 72 students, had 11 that completed the survey for a 15.3% rate. Yeah, that's low. So one of the key insights that I saw was that the self-efficacy for students in terms of writing a search screen was low. Like the mean was 3.89 out of 10. The self-efficacy defined a scholarly journal article in the library database varied anywhere from 0 to 10, 0 being I have no experience with this, to 10, I've mastered the skill. And that wide variety in the spring of the freshman year was like, whoa, what are we dealing with here? In terms of what's next, I like to move the study from the engineering IRB to actually having my own IRB so that I can survey the freshman students here at Wake in totality. Because one of the things that I saw is that students are not exposed to engineering databases in high schools. And that's from 2 questions that I asked. One of the questions that I asked was, what databases of the following data have you heard for before you came to college? No one ever heard for Web of Science. There was one student who had heard of SciFinder. No one ever heard of Engineering Workbench or Embase. And there was even one student who hadn't heard about any of the above databases. And then I asked the following questions, but which are the ones that you use? Because, knowing about a database and using a database, totally different things. And I'm even we haven't even got to which ones do you feel comfortable using? Because students could have touched a database once, but even in terms of use, absolutely positively 0 in terms of students who had used Web of Science, SciFinder, Engineering Workbench, or Embase. So that tied into some informal research that I've been doing in EGR 212 transport phenomena, which students usually take their fall or spring of their sophomore year. And in that course, before I even start the one-shot, I have an Excel spreadsheet where I ask the students, what engineering system are you using? Because I found that it's more helpful to engage students if I'm demonstrating how to do research using one of the engineering systems that they've already selected. But I asked them, are you a novice? Are you an expert? Or are you somewhere in between in terms of our library discovery interface Primo and typical engineering databases, Web of Science, SciFinder, and Engineering Workbench? And as you can see, those percentages are high in terms of that they believe they're novices. There's only one expert in Primo, none in any of the databases. And in between, there was 11% were in between for Primo. And then you can see for Web of Science, SciFinder, and Engineering Workbench, it's still relatively low. So in terms of barriers and opportunities, the biggest barriers for me for this particular project is balancing the known and unknown projects and events and expectations. So from developing my promotion dossier in fall of 2022, which was a process. So there's always an initial draft, a review, edits, some additional review, et cetera, et cetera. Also, I have a research interest. One of my research interests is the intersection of AI, data science, and information literacy. As you know, AI took off in the fall of 22. So my major focus in terms of research switched to, integrating AI into research instruction, and also physical therapy. I tore the meniscus on my knee. When you think about doing physical therapy, when you're physically tired, you're also mentally tired. And the majority of our work as a librarian is mental. And even with mental fatigue, you're physically fatigued. So you can only read and learn and do so much before your body's like, and we're done. But there's so many other things that go on. So I would definitely advise anyone who's doing research, because one of the things I did was I did block off Friday, but I didn't keep that time sacred. But you do want to basically block off different periods of time during the week, during the day, for you to actually conduct your own research, for you to synthesize that research, for you to make any necessary notes, for you to write, for you to make changes, for you to discuss, to get feedback on your research. Like one of the things that I did to really help me with writing was to schedule a Zoom 1-hour session a week with a fellow librarian where we just sat and wrote on Zoom together. And that level of accountability really helped in terms of getting, several writing deadlines that I had completed. But with this particular research, in terms of additional opportunities, it definitely highlighted the need to integrate information literacy throughout the engineering curriculum, because if students are coming into college without any experience with engineering databases, and there's other research, as another article I was reading that showed that when a lot of engineering students, when they graduate and leave and go into industry, they still they haven't developed their information literacy muscle. So what are the things that we need to do in between freshman and senior year to actually help students? Because I did develop and teach information literacy for engineering in the spring of 2022, but as the only engineering or librarian for engineering, developing, teaching that course to all engineering students would be something that would need to be planned logistically, looking at the number of engineering students we have. Another opportunity would be to replicate the survey at different schools in the triad to see in the different student populations, what are those differences? So in terms of where I'm looking at to present or publish, the major key for me is to present at the American Society for Engineering Education, ASCE, in June of next year. So I just need to finalize my abstract and submit that by October 1st. But then there are other things, remember I said, things that take over, but I'm determined to finish this research because I've collected the data, even started analyzing it, and just need to sit down and spend some additional time. But there's other things, those competing priorities. So I have a second book chapter that's due next week. There's the abstract to present at the Charleston conference for me and some other librarians here in the triad on a separate survey that we did on AI and academic librarians' perceptions. That was accepted, and that's going to be November 14th in person in Charleston and online December 12th. There's a third book chapter that I have that's due December 1st. And there's also an article that I'm in progress that I'm writing with 2 other librarians at different universities in terms of AI implementation in academic libraries that's targeted for completion December. So my other piece of advice as someone who's an inattentive type A personality is to ensure that whatever's on your plate in that moment gives you time to pivot if you need to. So rather than scheduling every 37.5 hours in the week or 40 hours in a week, depending on what your schedule is, you do want to leave yourself some leeway just in case you have something go wrong, like the internet dying. That's happened to me twice when I've had a major deadline, both for this particular research and another project. Yeah, actually a few, because fall of 2022 was very interesting. So that's my short how do you deal with hiccups in your research? Now we like to turn it over to the audience. Are there any questions that you have for any of our panelists? Or is there a general question that you have about conducting research? And right now we have the time scheduled to 1:45, so we can take the entire 30 minutes or less, just depending on what questions do you have. And feel free to unmic and ask the question, or feel free to ask your question in the chat if that's more comfortable. And Leah, just wanted to say thank you for the presentations. The projects sound amazing. Thank you, Leah. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks. So one of the themes that I felt like I noticed running through all of these projects at different stages is the support of a research program, the RTI or the IRDL. So just from your perspectives as librarians who are engaged in these kinds of projects, I'm not sure how would you rate that, or would you, if you did not have that kind of support, do you feel like you want to run and get it right now, or did you have to work really hard to sell this to your administration, like I need this 1 day a week, or I don't know, any comments in terms of that?
Yeah, I definitely think I think I might be the newest MLS graduate, but one of the things that struck me when I started working as a librarian was kind of the difference between what I learned in library school and then the on-the-job application, and how there was so much that I still needed to learn after I finished my degree. And research was one of them. And like even during my interview, I was asked about my research interests. And it's not a question I knew I was going to be asked, but I had an answer because of, just doing projects in my program and also receiving mentorship myself. So that was something that I was encouraged to think about, to have a research focus. And so for me, it really made a difference because, you kind of get a cursory overview of research in terms of like how to help other people with their research. But what IRDL did for me was actually to help me to develop my own research and refresh me on, how to conduct research and the social science methods, which, I was familiar with being a sociology major, but that was a while ago. So if you don't use it, you lose it. And I think that program actually really helped to reinforce things that I may have been familiar with, as well as things that I wasn't familiar with. And also not just how to help other people with their research, but actually how to do my own.
Yes, I think for me, there was even though I've done research outside of being a librarian, the depth of that research, when you compare it, in industry to academia, would be surface. So when you're doing your own research, when you have to, you start basically developing those muscles that you, building on what Candace said, for my MLIS, in terms of adding to what I already knew about research, that took me from probably on a scale of 1 to 10, from a 4 to a 7. Going through IRDL took me from a 7 to a 9. But in terms of understanding, there's still areas that I feel that even after going through IRDL and doing a lot of my own research, that I need to learn more about. Like my writing process is still not developed. Because it's not like I can sit at a desk and be like, okay, I'm going to write. There's sometimes my mind is actually in a frame to write during the day. And there's sometimes my mind is in a frame to write at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So, and then understanding one of the things that Angela spoke to was the fact that her writing style was different from one of her co-writers. Develop my writing style in general. I write more like a fictional novel because that's what I read every day. In terms of writing for an academic article, it is totally different. So I think IRDL was very helpful for me in terms of starting to help me to realize the things that I knew, the things that I didn't know, and develop in a lot of those areas that I didn't know. But also it gave me a cohort of people in my same situation, in the sense of individuals doing research to bounce ideas off of. Like, although my IRDL cohort ended in June of 2023, we still meet on Zoom once a month just to check in, bounce ideas off of one another, and different things of that nature. So do you need to go through a research program that's tailored for a librarian? I don't think you necessarily need to, but I think it makes it more helpful to have that structured approach to help you to learn how to do research from A to Z.
I want to follow up on what Denise has said, because I didn't have the benefit of a program such as IRDL, 15 years ago, and I wish I had. So one, if you have the opportunity to get in that type of group, whether it's something on your own campus or a specific program such as this, I would take advantage of it. But for me, it was all about finding mentors and people who had done similar types of research to what I was thinking about doing all along. And I still even do that now. There's some methodologies that I'm just not familiar with. I mean, like for citation analysis, for instance, I'm thinking about doing something with my coastal studies liaison area that has to do with citation analysis of PhD dissertations. And it's not something that I've done before, but I also know other librarians who I work with who have done that type of research before and published on it. So, I'm going to always go and pick their brain, or sometimes it's good to just, if you don't feel like doing an individual research project by yourself, if you have an idea and maybe you can get a partner to help you with that, to bounce ideas off of, whether it's at your institution or another one. Those are always helpful in ways to learn, to become a better researcher. Because I know even after doing this a long time, I still don't feel like I'm the best researcher as compared to maybe somebody who's in a very specific field with a PhD and does that type of research and writing all the time, where with most of us, it's just a small portion of our job duties.
I want to add just one more thing too, not to belabor it, but in addition to what Candace, Denise, and Angela mentioned, the structured program comes along with, well, just that structure, and most importantly, accountability. My program, the RTI, I mean, there was just the expectation that by the end of the year, you would have some collateral presentation whether you were finished with the project or not, you were going to present on where you were, and having that both accountability with like quarterly reports, having to submit those every 3 to 4 months, and the expectation of, it wasn't just if you're ready you'll do this. The expectation was you will present and share your findings whether they're complete or not. So from an accountability and structure perspective, a structured program is what I'll always recommend to someone, if budgets and if other support systems are there for you.
And I forgot the second part of your question in terms of support from your university. One part of IRDL is, in order to submit an application, we had to get a letter from our dean, basically saying that we would have that time, that one day that Candace had mentioned, a week to do research, and that we would also be given the support in terms of whatever we needed, in terms of databases, et cetera, along with that time. So that's one of the benefits from doing a structured program. And even outside of that, I think, I know, here at CSR Library at Wake, we set our goals once a year, and it's for us as librarians to decide what we want to do. So whatever we do have that support, not only in terms of time, but also in terms of resources, because there's internal grants that we can apply to inside of the library, as well as to the provost's office if we are traveling to present at a conference.
There is a question in the chat. Let's see here. Okay, so what are your motivational factors as the STEM disciplines evolve, and how do you plan to continuously evolve your own research?
Well, I chatted specifically with the person who asked the question, but for the general group, my research projects always grow out of the other projects and things that are going on with my job, even when I've been in different positions than the one that I'm in now. So if we're taking on a project as a department, or taking on a project as part of the library, or this is an instruction librarian when I'm doing instruction, if it's something new that we're trying, I usually try to find a way to at least come up with a presentation about it. At ECU, we used to be tenure track faculty members. We're not anymore. We're fixed term faculty members, but we can do research still if we want to for promotion purposes. There's a different type of promotion scale, but I always try to come up with something related to what I'm doing in my job. So as AI was coming along, and I try to find a way to fit that in with what my interests are with instruction and information literacy, and how I can incorporate that in my job, and then try to come up with a research project from it. And my rule of thumb is I try to do, and this is bare minimum, is at least a poster session, presentation, and an article out of every project that I do. And depending on what the topic is, there may be multiple presentations or multiple articles that take an amount of time. So usually if you can just be aware of things that are going on around you, you might be able to create a research project out of it.
Yeah, for me, in terms of the discipline evolving, things don't move that fast here at Wake. Like the engineering department was created in the fall of 2017. Like most of them started July 1st, and then we're developing the courses each year as the program progressed. And I was hired that March of 2019. So although the industry or the field itself is changing outside of Wake, changes in academia occur much slower than in corporate America or in general. But in terms of my own, what I do research on the topics that interest me. So it's my curiosity that drives what research I do. I have been playing with AI tools before AI took off. And then when it took off, it's like, okay, there's more things I can play with or experiment with. But like another area of my research was for mentoring BIPOC librarians. Yeah. So it's just a matter of, in terms of what evolves my research is curiosity. As long as I want to know more about it, I dive deeper into it. I'm not totally a mockingbird where, the glittery jewel is like, oh, I want to play with it. But yeah, but also, even looking at long-term, what's something, like when I thought about, initially like the research project that I talked about today, when I first looked at it, I literally broke it up into like a multi-phase project. So there's still other areas of that I want to explore, even after the initial survey with engineering students. So I let my passion and my curiosity drive me.
Cool. So for me, in terms of motivation factors for STEM disciplines evolving, at my university, I'm actually developing a program called The Science Of, in which I show the intersectionality between STEM fields and different disciplines on campus. So we're going to start off with the science of music, and so show how like science is involved in the playing of music as well as vocal singing. And just a little fact about me, I've been singing classical and opera since I was 9, so singing is like another passion of mine. And so that'll be really fun. And then after that, we're going to be doing the science of cooking, and cooking is also another passion of mine. So, um, so I actually get to do things that I think are really fun and enjoyable that I'm good at. And I get to incorporate that into my work. So it actually really helps me, I think, to do my job better and to serve my university better. But in terms of how I plan to continue evolving my own research, I am so very, very interested in people. I absolutely love people. And so I love, like when I'm speaking these different programs, I want to hear their perspectives. I want to learn all about them as administrators about, their alumni of the program and just kind of um, like how people, I'm interested in the humanist side of librarianship and because, we're humans, so we need to understand who we are, what makes us tick, how we got to be that way. And that's why I actually incorporated the wellness piece into my research. It wasn't just enough for me to say, okay, do you feel like these programs prepared you for your job? Do you feel like they put you on the right track for what you consider to be career success? But I want to know how you've been affected personally. And so I think that as I'm hearing people's stories, as I'm doing these in-depth interviews, that I'm going to get more of a chance to actually evolve my research even more and create more chapters for my book, which is coming. I'm speaking that into existence.
All right, and Michelle had a question in the chat, who's eligible to apply for IRDL? For instance, can paraprofessionals apply and participate? Yeah, for IRDL, you just have to be a librarian in the US or in Canada. You can be a paraprofessional, faculty librarian, non-tenure track. And the variety of different research interests in IRDL vary. Like in my cohort, there was actually an individual who was researching the transition from paraprofessionals to librarian. There's another individuals that was researching how people move into management and access services. So there's a wide variety of interest in IRDL. Yeah, because I'm trying to think that they accept.
So the official language is we're seeking novice librarian researchers who are employed by academic libraries or by libraries in a research setting in the United States or Canada, employed full-time as a librarian or archivist. Yeah, so that's it.
So also, Michelle, ask the question, if you have research questions that come out of the session, who can reach out to you. Each of our email addresses is in the presentation. So I'm thinking it is. So feel free to reach out to any one of us if you have any questions for an individual. If you have questions for all of us, feel free to send out an email and have everyone included on that. And let me add my email to the chat. Just in case the email follow-up.
I just want to say thank you guys so much for your thoughtful questions. As you can tell, we're all very passionate about our research, so it's just it's actually just fun to even discuss it with everybody, you know. So thank you guys so much. Oh yes, and I'm on LinkedIn too, so yes, you can feel free. I'm Candace Jacobs MLS on LinkedIn, and yeah, so you should be recognizing my picture.
Yeah, because I think I'm LinkedIn. Hold on. What is that LinkedIn link? So literally like J. Denise Lewis. If you do, I think it's linkedin.com/IN/J. Denise Lewis. Hold on, let me try that real quick before I send it. And it's not.
Yes, but I'm listed as um,
Because I have a gazillion things open on my thingamajigbob at the time right now. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so that link will take you directly to my LinkedIn profile. Any other questions?
oh yes, Leah has a hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Leah.
Thanks. This is just more a a comment. I'm so interested in wellness, so I'm hoping that NCLA or some other conference will provide a venue for, Candace to present. Maybe if things end up going this way, mentoring and wellness, or things like that. I love when someone else has a research project. I admire it so much, and I like it when they're able to, or when they have the opportunity to present like this small subsection of it or whatever it might be, because you've got such a robust research interest and yay wellness. So I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed for that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I will tell you, okay, so Leah, it's gonna be all right. NC Live actually had their one-day conference in May, and it was on wellness. The keynote speaker talked about slow librarianship. Yeah, Candace and I went to that one.
Yeah, I actually, yeah, if anybody, oh,
And you even presented at that one too.
yeah, I was gonna say if anybody's interested, I think I have it posted on my LinkedIn. I could share the link in the email because you guys are gonna get these slides or this presentation. Yeah, I presented with my coworkers, Melody Rude and Juanita Thacker, and we talked about what was the presentation called? I think it's called Let's Talk, when a soft command firmly like violates your boundaries or something like that. And just kind of talking about wellness and in terms of like, librarianship, it's so easy to get burned out, and to learn how to set boundaries. Even as women, it's more difficult because it's assumed we're going to take on more of a mothering kind of role or something like that. And that we're going to, do too much and be underpaid. And so yeah, we discussed those types of things in there.
Yeah, I included the link to the NC Live conference online. Yeah, there were NC Live actually has a number. I'm trying to think if they have a subsection. They do different webinars, workshops on wellness. There's another organization that Niche, Niche.
Oh yeah, I love them.
Niche Academy.
Niche Academy will also have workshop and webinars on wellness. NCLA, the conference was it last year's conference? The one before that. That's every 2 years. But the NCLA conference will be next year. So I definitely recommend sending an email to the NCLA conference chair, asking for a wellness track, because there are different libraries in North Carolina that focus on wellness. Like at our library, we had a wellness committee. I think that went away and was absorbed by another section within the library, but we always have different things focused on wellness for students as well as for library staff and faculty. Because I love it when they bring the dogs. The puppy.
Yeah, actually, just a little shameless plug. We're gonna have those emotional support dogs at our library during finals this semester. So
Yeah. We have ours during finals as well. But someone had like during the semester, but I forget. Like literally, I saw the email the day that they had the puppies, and of course, I was working from home, and I was like, but I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be all right. But yeah, so if any of you have any questions after this point in time, definitely feel free to reach out and get in contact with us, either via email, LinkedIn. Feel free to give us a call as well. But thank you all. I would like to thank my fellow presenters, Candace, Angela, and Colleen. And thank you all as the participants for attending and for your questions as well. I hope everyone have a wonderful Wednesday, and we'll probably send out emails for the next STEM-LINC webinar that'll be held in Q1 of 2025, closer to that event.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Bye all.